Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 941. Peculiar Injury. 300 years ago, Chao Guofeng and Gu Yunyang had indeed arranged for a showdown. The duo fought for a day and a night, and still, a winner couldn't be determined. This matter was kept secret, and no one was to divulge it. If any one of them achieved a breakthrough, then they would arrange again for another match. Chao Guofeng had always kept his word and not mentioned it to anyone else. But today, he was hearing of this matter from Gu Yunyang's grandson. And the battle result of being evenly matched was altered to him begging for mercy on the ground pitifully. And the reason why he was still alive was because he was spared his life. What nonsense was this? If such talk is really spread around, can I still remain alive? He couldn't help but turn over and look at Gu Yunyang with a look of disdain. Gu Yunyang's face flushed red. Brother Chao, please don't misunderstand. How can there be such a thing? It's all rubbish that those little bastards blindly fabricated. Chao Guofeng had plenty of experience to tell with one look at Gu Yunyang's attitude that the matter about their showdown had become an accomplishment that Gu Yunyang used to flaunt to the juniors of his family. The outcome of the battle may not be as pathetic as Gu Feiyu had made it sound, but it definitely wouldn't be any better. His face couldn't help but turn as cold as ice. He nodded his head and said, "Great! Great! Great! Great brother! Great friend! A great grandson you've groomed there! Great! 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 I have lived in vain for hundreds of years now. I've only come to learn something new today. I really didn't know that the Gu family is so powerful in the misty illusory manner. For so many years, I've really been ignorant and inexperienced." A look of sincere embarrassment appeared on Gu Yunyang's face. He really couldn't figure this out. This was such a private matter only him and Chao Guofeng, the two who were involved, knew of it. How did his grandson find out? Chao Guofeng definitely did not divulge it. Even if he did, he wouldn't make himself sound that bad. So the problem obviously lay with Gu Yunyang himself. But in his memories, he clearly did not mention this matter to anyone. Fortuitously, in one of his drunken stupors, this old man had unintentionally brought up the battle between him and Chao Guofeng. Before his sons and juniors, this drunken old master Gu naturally exaggerated the outcome of the battle by a little bit, changing it from being evenly matched to him slightly standing in a more advantageous position. But it was a pity that under the exaggeration of the juniors, it became more and more exaggerated and ultimately became like this. And it was because of this misinformation that Gu Feiyu assumed that Mo Junyi, who had Chao Guofeng as his support, could not afford to offend him. And that was why he so boldly tried to find trouble for young Master Jun. From his understanding, even if Chao Guofeng came looking for a fight, he had his grandfather backing him up. So why would he take young Master Jun's warnings to heart? Chao Guofeng was extremely enraged. Gu Yunyang, who knew he was in the wrong, instantly vented all of his anger on his unlucky grandson. In a flash, he slapped Gu Yunyang heavily across his face with a crisp paw. "Evil creature! What bullshit are you spouting? Hurry up and apologize to Saint Emperor Chao and his disciple." This slap was clearly an act of disciplining his grandson. It was loud and clear, but he did not use much strength in it. It was just a form of warning, leaving room for both sides to reconcile. But what no one had expected was that the hysterical look frozen on Gu Feiyu's face turned into one that was dull, and his face turned pale. Then, his head tilted back and he spat a mouthful of blood into the air. Fresh blood scattered down like mist, covering the entire space instantly. Then, He spat another mouth of blood again. It was so intense that it splat onto the ceiling. Blood poured out of Gu Feiyu's mouth. His entire body trembled as he swayed unsteadily. Then, he suddenly fell onto the ground heavily, his legs twitching, his mouth still spitting mouthful after mouthful of fresh blood. He was already unconscious. Young Master Gu, who was still showing off his might just a moment ago, was now lying on the floor in a precarious state. His life was hanging in the balance. This sudden change of situation was beyond everyone's expectations. The two old men couldn't be bothered to argue over this. Gu Yunyang instantly picked up his grandson and checked his pulse. He couldn't help but reveal a look of shock. The condition of the meridians in Gu Feiyu's body was unusually odd, flickering between strong and weak. When it was strong, it was hammering about intensely. When it was weak, it could barely be detected. His qi and blood flow were showing obvious signs of damage, on the verge of having all his blood explode in his body and dying at any moment. From head to toe, including his upper and lower dantian, all Xian qi was messed up and disorderly. Even someone who had never cultivated Xian qi and was on the verge of dying would not have a peculiar symptom that was terrible to this extent. Even if one suffered from the devil's bite during practice, it wouldn't be as bad as how Gu Feiyu was now. Even a Saint Emperor's powers and cultivation were unable to rescue him. What exactly is going on? Gu Yunyang was frozen, squatting on the ground. He used all his might to recall how much strength he had used earlier, but the more he tried to recall, the more confused he was. He clearly did not use any Xian Qi and only used the strength of a regular slap. Why did his grandson suffer such a severe injury? If he had really used strength, why couldn't he remember it? Besides, even if he did accidentally use his strength and hurt his grandson, it was more likely that he killed him with a single slap. It wouldn't cause his body to become like this. Ah! His mind became blank the more he tried to figure it out. What exactly is going on? Gu Yunyang mumbled to himself. Suddenly, as if he realized something, he lifted his head and looked at Miao Xiao Miao and Jun Moxie with a cold stare. He asked coldly, "What exactly is going on?" Two sentences that were exactly the same. The first was purely a question directed to himself, whereas the second one was extremely accusatory, directed at the male and female before him. Old Master Gu assumed that in this restaurant, before the two of them had arrived, someone had used some underhanded method on Gu Feiyu. As to who the person is, Mo Junyi involved an important party, but had pathetic cultivation despite his free and natural physique. But that underhanded act was extremely peculiar and not the work of any ordinary expert. That lad is definitely not capable of it. So the only possible person who did it was Miao Xiao Miao. Then, he continued to delve deeper. His grandson had ultimately been pestering Miao Xiao Miao. Gu Yunyang was well aware of this unrequited romance. Could it be that this lass is sick of being pestered and actually developed an intention to kill? Making use of this opportunity today to deliver the fatal blow and drawing that Mo add into the situation, causing Chao Guofeng to get involved. So ultimately, it became a feud between the Gu family and Chao Guofeng and the 6 other Saint Emperors while she stayed out of it? Could it really be like this? Old Master Gu was more affirmed of his speculations the more he thought about it, and the way he looked at Miao Xiao Miao also became increasingly hostile. If not because Miao Xiao Miao had a unique background and exceptionally strong support behind her, Gu Yunyang would already have captured her. Miao Xiao Miao jolted. She was a clever girl, instantly figuring out what Gu Yunyang meant by his sentence. She had even figured out what Gu Yunyang was thinking when he asked this question. Noticing old Master Gu's hostile glare, she couldn't help but feel startled. What sort of great misfortune and bad luck is this? What do I have to do with this? It's your grandson that has been pestering me every day, leaving me frustrated beyond words. I haven't even said anything about it. Now he, for some reason, got injured, and you actually are thinking of pinning this on me? Miao Xiao Miao felt incensed by this. But there was still no change in her expression. She replied indifferently. Old Master Gu's question is odd. How could the two of us not know what exactly is going on? Just now, we were still watching young Master Gu aggressively scolding others loudly. So how come he suddenly became like this? What exactly is going on? Miao Xiao Miao's reply was as good as not giving one. Not only did it not explain anything, it instead returned Gu Yunyang's last sentence back to him, without changing a single word. She may have figured out the situation, but she had not realized that Gu Yunyang's injuries had put his life at risk. If not because Gu Yunyang's life was in danger, with Miao Xiao Miao's background, Gu Yunyang may not necessarily dare treat her like this. Miao Xiao Miao pushed this question back, driving Gu Yunyang's anger to boiling point. But he couldn't do anything due to her status. So he scoffed heavily and used all his strength to transfer his Xian Qi to treat his grandson's injuries, even ignoring Chao Guofeng who was beside him. When Miao Xiao Miao saw Gu Yunyang, she was still thinking of carefully explaining the entire matter in great detail. In this way, at least she would be able to remove herself from this situation. But from the way Gu Yunyang instantly accused and questioned her, she suddenly felt a surge of disgust. Old Master Gu, how mighty of you! What basis do you have to accuse me like this? You have no right to question me like this, in terms of status or position. Because of this reason, she swallowed the words that she wanted to say back, reluctant to lower her status. At the same time, she developed some doubts in her mind. It seemed that Gu Feiyu was still fine just now. So why did he suddenly become like this? As if his life is in danger? This change is too bizarre. It's just anger, plus a slap that used no Xian Qi. It shouldn't have become this serious. She was unaware, and even everyone present doesn't know, that Gu Feiyu had indeed sustained severe injuries, and his life was at risk. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 942. Inverting Black and White. He was first agitated by Jun Moxie. Then his killing intent was incited too. But because of Jun Moxie's heaven-defying physique and shocking status, he couldn't do it, and thus, he could only forcefully retract it. But in this way, it was the equivalent of having a fierce battle within his own body. Although it was not enough to inflict an injury, but his mental state had been greatly damaged and his vitality was greatly drained. Yet Jun Moxie continued to relentlessly pressure him. Gu Feiyu, who had a strength that was multiple folds of this Mo Junyi, still ultimately did not dare to strike. So he felt very aggrieved. He felt as if he could crush Mo Junyi with just his finger alone, but he did not dare to do it in fear of the dire consequences. And thus, Gu Feiyu's killing intent surged out and retracted again. He was forced to take 17 steps back by Jun Moxie. 17 steps. His killing aura had been circulating back and forth in his body 17 times. If one used a battlefield to describe the body, it would have fiercely battled 17 times. Especially when he was so angered that he could no longer control himself. Perhaps he could still put up some resistance when being invaded by another person's killing aura. At the very least, he could still be protected by his physical body even if he abandoned his consciousness. But being invaded by his own killing aura was something that one had no defenses against. Under this sort of circumstance, how could he not be injured? How much could humans' meridians endure? Not everyone's meridians were as perverse as young Master Jun's. Even with Gu Feiyu's cultivation of a level 3 spirit Xian, it was still too much for him. If he started to circulate Xian Qi to rest after he had retreated 17 steps, he would just be severely ill and deprove greatly in his Xian skills, but there would be no danger to his life. But when his mentality broke down the 17th time, Jun Moxie's sudden retreat had created a temporary pause. This was a natural reaction, and anyone would react the same. One who was acting like an aggressive wolf suddenly turning into a vulnerable lamb. Even the strongest of mental fortitudes would be stunned at this sort of great disparity. Although this momentary pause was barely a tenth of the duration of the blink of an eye, it was enough for Jun Moxie to make use of that opportunity to activate his psychological manipulation. He took the opportunity in Gu Feiyu's pause to quickly control his mind. This was at the time where the killing aura was surging out, and all his Xian Qi was on standby, ready to deal the fatal blow, all coursing in his meridians. In this way, both his killing aura and Xian Qi lost control simultaneously, thoroughly dissolving the last bit of strength that was protecting his meridians. Both energies wreaked havoc within his meridians, shattering and smashing all of Gu Feiyu's meridians into pieces. If this was merely a backlash from Xian Qi, it wouldn't be this bad. If it was an inverted flow of killing aura, it would also not cause such an adverse effect. But because there were these two different types of energies clashing within, and especially when it was after they had been set off for 17 whole steps, it had accidentally created the peculiar injuries that Gu Feiyu had right now. It was extremely odd. Truly extremely odd. An injury like this had never appeared in this world before. Because since ancient times until now, experts who were spirit Xian and above, who could have suffered grievances like Gu Feiyu had today. Gu Feiyu's achievement today was truly something to be proud of. Because he had created something entirely new in the history of the world. This might not be a major reputation, but it was enough to allow his name to be recorded in the historical records of Xian injuries. His name would never be forgotten. Even Gu Yunyang, a third-level Saint Emperor, could not figure out how his grandson's injuries came about. Actually, it was not just him. Even this other creator of this new creation, young Master Jun, may not have thought that it would turn out like this. AI, how did it turn out like this? I may have successfully created the beginning and the process, but I didn't think of the ending. How regrettable. Ah! Gu Yunyang transfused his pure Xian Qi with no reservations. But he discovered that the internal system within his grandson's body was still a mess. Even if he wished to keep him alive, it would require great effort. At the very least, he needed to thoroughly reorder and tidy up the meridians, coupling it with medicine in order to protect his life. This injury was too severe and too peculiar. But right now, this was not a good place for treatment. And even if he fully recovered, Gu Feiyu would be unable to advance beyond this for the rest of his life. And he may even begin to regress significantly, because his meridians were entirely tidied by an external force. This meant that the form would retain forever. He will never be able to improve. This successor which he harbored great expectations for was completely crippled. Old Master Gu carried his grandson's body up with one hand and slowly stood up. His face was dark and heavy. This matter today. What exactly is going on? When he said this sentence, he did not look at anyone, but everyone could sense that he was directing it to them. Gu Yunyang's aura surged out like torrent waves as he spoke. Little beansprout, who was slightly far away, began to tremble, her lips pale and colorless. Her lively eyes had instantly turned dull. Miao Xiao Miao's pale yellow garments swayed due to the aura. But her eyes remained calm and undisturbed. In a flash, Chao Guofeng was already standing before Jun Moxie, blocking the aura from invading his disciple. He coldly said, "Gu Yunyang, why? Are you really not going to act like a senior and interrogate the younger generation with torture?" "I won't be using torture to interrogate, but I feel a need to find out the truth of the matter today. And the answer to this lies in these three people before me. I believe old Chao won't deny this," he laughed coldly. Although the Gu family had plenty of descendants, in Gu Feiyu's generation, there were not many that were strong enough. And amongst those who were present in this room, Gu Feiyu's strength may not be first, but it was enough to be ranked second. To have an achievement of a level 3 spirit Xian at the age of 20 plus, it was impossible without relatively good physique, even if he had plenty of medicine and pills to aid him in his attainment. There were almost 2,000 people in the Gu family. They were one of the biggest families in the misty illusory manor. And one of the most hopeful youths was crippled like this here. Gu Yunyang's anger could be imagined. "Gu Yunyang, you are a senior figure. Yet this old man never imagined that you were someone like this." Chao Guofeng sighed as he said with great heartache, "Forget the fact that you did not take the sworn agreement between us seriously, boasting of it before your sons and grandsons blatantly. If it is for the sake of boasting occasionally, I can still understand. But you allowed them to brazenly spread it out there and did not even restrain them." Chao Guofeng looked at him with genuine disappointment. "Forget it as well. When at our level, false reputation is nothing to be bothered about. I can allow you to enjoy all that reputation. What else can I do? But today, for the sake of your own grandson, you completely ignored the future of the entire misty illusory manor, recklessly releasing your killing aura to force and coerce one that has the free and natural physique and the granddaughter of the palace lord. Don't tell me that for the sake of your grandson, you are going to sacrifice the entire Gu family." Chao Guofeng's hair and beard were flying as he said the last line, staring harshly at Gu Yunyang's face. Gu Yunyang's expression faltered slightly. "Saint Emperor Chao has exaggerated. I only want to find out the truth of the matter. Is Saint Emperor Chao going to pin the accusation of raising a rebellion on this old man? If young lady Xiao Miao is willing to tell, great. If she isn't, then forget it. There are so many witnesses present today. It is impossible that the truth will not be revealed." Chao Guofeng scoffed coldly. "That's a nice way to put it." At this point in time, both parties had already begun to confront each other. Miao Xiao Miao sighed softly and wanted to open her mouth to speak. She did not wish for the current situation to become any worse, and if she explained everything clearly, all three parties would be able to get out of this situation. But Jun Moxie was more than glad to have the situation unfold like this. So how could he let her open her mouth to explain the situation? He quickly said, "Since old senior Gu seeks the truth, and this junior is also at a loss, why don't I be the one to explain the entire situation for senior? The two young ladies shall listen. If what I say doesn't match what happened, they can point it out immediately." Gu Yunyang's eyes gleamed. "Fine. Speak." Old Master Gu had already assumed that Miao Xiao Miao had done something, so naturally he was unwilling to listen to young Lady Miao's description. Seeing young Master Jun volunteer himself, naturally he would be more willing to listen to Jun Moxie recount the situation. "This lad looks honest and simple. I believe he won't be lying." It went like this. This junior had just recovered and came out for a stroll. wandering here unconsciously. This young lady came to invite me, saying that her mistress wished to invite me to meet her. Jun Moxie glanced at Little Beansprout and began to recount. Chao Guofeng and Gu Yunyang instantly figured out what happened from this beginning. The reason behind the matter today was obvious. It must be that Miao Xiao Miao had initiated inviting Mo Jun Xie. Then Gu Yunyang, who was tagging along, became jealous. As a result, Mo Jun Xie, who had just arrived at the misty illusory manor, with a cultivation level that was barely near a silver xian, entered the position of number 1 amongst all the youths of the misty illusory manor. Gu Feiyu was definitely not willing to take it lying down, so coupled with other reasons, naturally, he wanted to take this opportunity to humiliate this free and natural physique. I was extremely afraid then. Young Master Jun shrunk his shoulders, cowering as he looked at Gu Yunyang. I had never seen much of the world since I was young, so how could I dare to argue with young Master Gu? I wanted to evade it, but young Master Gu said, "In the misty illusory manner, there are too many existences that even Saint Emperor Chao does not dare to offend, and told me not to be too arrogant." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 943. Such an explanation. The moment they heard these words, they understood straight away. The entire conflict had most likely started from this sentence. Although this sentence was not considered scolding or even an insult to Chao Guofeng, the disdain and contempt in his words were clear to see. Which disciple could possibly hold their anger after hearing their master being talked about in that manner? If they could maintain their cool, that disciple would be a straw bag. As expected, Jun Moxie continued with some righteous indignation. Saint Emperor Chao has treated me very well, and even saved my life at great peril to his own. Junior did not forget Master's teachings, but was truly unable to endure at the time. Thus, I asked young Master Gu, of those people whom Saint Emperor Chao could not afford to offend, is he included among them? Gu Yunyang's face darkened in an instant. In contrast, Chao Guofeng's originally stormy expression lightened into a faint smile as he felt a gratified feeling in his heart. So all his efforts had not been for nothing. In that moment, the both of them could easily imagine the rage that Gu Feiyu must have felt when he heard that question. That was the equivalent of a bare-faced slap. With Gu Feiyu's weak cultivation, how could he be a person that Chao Guofeng could not afford to offend? After that, young Master Gu seemed to have the intention to teach me a lesson. He took out his sword and placed it against my throat. Although he didn't really pierce it through my neck, it still pricked my skin. It was truly painful, and I even thought that he'd stabbed through my neck. Jun Moxie recounted with some fear as his pupils trembled lightly. Chao Guofeng snorted heavily, and his expression turned even more unsightly. Although young Master Jun was standing completely unharmed in front of him. That situation earlier had been too dangerous. How could he not be worried? Gu Yunyang's face also changed. This grandson of his was unconvinced by other people's talent, became jealous, and then insulted the other party's master. After being questioned in return, he actually took out his sword like a hooligan and even started to curse aloud. This kind of behavior was truly somewhat too overboard. It was not too much to call him shameless and despicable. In such a situation, even if the other party exploded in rage and killed him, it would be hard to blame them. On the side, Miao Xiao Miao furrowed her brows lightly, thinking to herself that this Mo Jun Xie's words were too deceiving. However, she couldn't exactly point out where his words were wrong. Because he was recounting the events exactly, not adding or subtracting anything. But truthfully, he had subtracted a lot of core information. This young master Mo Junyi had never said anything about what he said and how he provoked and fueled Gu Feiyu's rage, edging him on. The most important factor that he'd conveniently left out was actually his involvement in this matter. However, the sly and smooth-tongued him had subtracted the importance of his involvement, making himself the innocent party. In addition, his current expression was confused and honest, tinged with a hint of lingering fear. No one would have believed that this simple and scared youth had, from a position of disadvantage, forced a third-level spirit Xian expert to sustain heavy injuries. But this simple account of the events had indeed obtained the desired effect. Chao Guofeng had grown angrier and angrier, while Gu Yunyang became more and more ashamed, unable to even lift his head to look at Chao Guofeng. At that time, I was truly scared stiff, thinking that young Master Gu was going to kill me. But if I begged for mercy, the humiliation that followed would undoubtedly be even worse. In fact, it would affect Saint Emperor Chao's name. Although I'm very scared of death, but Saint Emperor Chao's esteemed name is more important to me. Gu Yunyang and Chao Guofeng both nodded with understanding. They both knew that if he bowed down in such a situation, how would there be any good results? If word spread out that the legendary free and natural physique cultivator that Chao Guofeng had brought back was actually just a cowardly and spineless bumpkin, it would undoubtedly become the joke of the entire misty illusory manor. There was no doubt about it. So I steeled my heart and directly took a step forward, saying, "You dare to kill me? If you dare to kill me, go ahead then." Young Master Jun reenacted the situation earlier and took a firm step forward. Gu Yunyang sighed lightly and shook his head when he heard this. As he looked at this unconscious grandson in his arms, even his desire to take revenge had diminished. In fact, a disappointed feeling arose in his chest instead. This youth with the free and natural physique was currently at the crucial phase where his status is so great that just touching him would end up with one being scalded. Why would you go and provoke him for no reason? Chao Guofeng could picture the wretched look on Gu Feiyu's face as he held a sword against his disciple's throat, yet not daring to pierce it through. A moment ago, he was still filled with worry. However, he was now completely at ease, even having the leisure to smile happily. Kill this kid with the free and natural physique? Not to mention Gu Feiyu. Even the current Gu Yunyang would not dare to. I'm not sure what young Master Gu was thinking, but he never stabbed forward in the end. At that time, I was extremely frightened. But I was more afraid of implicating Saint Emperor Chao, so I stood my ground and refused to back down. But young Master Gu also did not back down. In that way, this junior and young Master Gu simply stood there in a stalemate. Both of us were riding atop ferocious tigers, unable to descend. Jun Moxie had a wronged expression on his face as he continued. Unable to retreat or break the stalemate, I decided that I might as well take another step forward. Because if I didn't advance, that would be... There's no need to continue. We roughly understand the rest of the situation now. Gu Yunyang interrupted hurriedly. If he continued speaking, it would come to the matter of his own grandson insulting Chao Guofeng. This old man will only ask you one more question. How many times did you advance in total? How many steps? And Feiyu, how many steps did he retreat? This. Jun Moxie scratched his head in an embarrassed manner. This junior's head was completely blank at that time, only remembering the movements. But I can't exactly remember the exact numbers now. Gu Yunyang nodded and turned to look at Miao Xiao Miao. Miao Xiao Miao thought for a moment and confirmed. Young Master Mo pushed forward a total of 17 times, for 17 steps. From that position over there, all the way to this wall. And young Master Gu, also backed off 17 times. Each time, he would be filled with rage, wanting to stab with his sword, and at the 17th time, you all arrived. Miao Xiao Miao's words perfectly matched up with Jun Moxie's words, proving the authenticity of his account. And Jun Moxie also left this opportunity for Miao Xiao Miao to explain, proving the matter further and further. 17 times. Gu Yunyang and Chao Guofeng both felt a chill in their teeth as they both sucked in a deep breath of air. The way that Gu Yunyang looked at Jun Moxie changed once again. This time with wariness and seriousness. This simple and honest-looking youth had actually forced his opponent backward 17 times, while the tip of a sword was poised against his throat. What kind of a concept was this? Miao Xiao Miao and the rest were still young and might not know the fearsomeness of something like this. But Gu Yunyang and Chao Guofeng were very clear about it in their hearts. How steadfast must a person's heart be to look death in the face so unflinchingly like that? Even if one was forcefully bracing himself, it was still an extremely rare matter. One had to know that in each of these 17 instances, Gu Feiyu could have killed him at least 1.700 times. The feat that this brat achieved had been the equivalent of stripping himself naked and sealing his cultivation while dancing atop a bed of knives, strolling right in front of the doorsteps of the gates of the netherworld, and placing one foot past the line every so often. Chao Guofeng suddenly realized the situation and said, Gu Yunyang, you should also understand now. Your grandson's injuries had been self-caused. In other words, it was him forcing himself which resulted in heavy internal injuries. Gu Yunyang had a dry look on his face as he nodded. To draw one's sword in rage. The sword must have been infused full of xian qi. But if that xian qi was not unleashed and ended up flowing back into one's body, it would undoubtedly form a backlash. From what Miao Xiao Miao had said, Gu Feiyu had activated his intent to kill every single time of the 17 times, but he'd forcefully endured. This meant that his own xian qi had, in a short time, formed into a backlash against his body 17 times. In addition, there was the rage, killing intent, and aggrieved emotions which culminated into this strange injury. Gu Yunyang was rendered speechless, and his face was bitter. The facts were right before his eyes, so who could he find to settle the scores? There wasn't a suitable person who could be blamed. It was very clear that all this was trouble that his own grandson had provoked. It was him who started scolding and humiliating the other, even drawing his sword to threaten others, resulting in this situation. The two of them had heard for themselves how vicious Gu Feiyu's words had been. After seeing this, what else was there to say? Look for Mo Junyi to settle the scores? The other party was the victim. Or Miao Xiao Miao. She was the most innocent one, seemingly having only been an onlooker. However, if he really couldn't find someone to blame, was this matter supposed to just end like this? Gu Yunyang, this old man shall say a word in fairness. You should be glad because your grandson is at least not dead. Chao Guofeng said coldly. If he weren't unconscious right now with heavy injuries, this old man would definitely seek an explanation from him as well. Can this old man's name be something that a mere child can sully and slander as he pleases? Otherwise, right now, him being able to keep his life while in such a wretched state, is definitely something that this old man will find hard to guarantee. Gu Yunyang was immediately enraged. But he quickly cooled down and asked slowly, by Brother Chao's words, does that mean you do not intend to pursue the matter? Chao Guofeng looked at him and snorted coldly. Your grandson is already in such a state. What else can this old man pursue? However, Gu Yunyang, you still owe this old man an explanation. Who knows what those juniors of your Gu family have been saying behind this old man's back? This explanation you must give to me. Gu Yunyang's mouth twitched, and he nodded with a sigh. Brother Chow, please calm. This old man will surely give you an explanation. If there are any more slanderous words going around regarding you, this old brother will bear responsibility. After saying that, he thought deeply for a moment and sighed heavily as he turned to Miao Xiao Miao and said, Miss Miao, today's matter is indeed Fei Yu who was in the wrong. This old man had been simply too worried about the boy and offended Miss Miao. Right now, this old man wishes to express my sincerest apologies to you. If Yu Fei manages to recover in the future, this old man will make sure to discipline him with greater efforts, preventing him from staining Miss Miao's purity. Miao Xiao Miao hurriedly returned a bow. Grandpa Gu is surely too serious with your words. This Miao is truly undeserving. No matter. Gu Yunyang smiled forcefully and continued. Only Fei Yu's current condition, if he doesn't get treated quickly, his path might truly end here today. Thus, this old man hopes that Miss Miao can help me with something. What do you think? Help with what? Miao Xiao Miao's eyes instantly shone with caution. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 944. Should laugh like this. This old man wants to meet your esteemed father, Lord Miao. Gu Yunyang said with a bitter smile. Just now, he'd already thought about all the possible methods at least twice. Now that he understood the source of the injury, wanting to retain Gu Fei Yu's life and help him recover completely was not a difficult matter at all. However, the much greater problem was that Gu Fei Yu would no longer be able to advance any further in his cultivation after he recovered. There was only one thing that could completely help Gu Fei Yu recover without leaving behind any side effects, even helping him grow stronger. Because of that, Gu Yunyang did not mind putting down his status and apologizing to Miao Xiao Miao, while listing his condition. Hearing this, Chao Guofeng snorted coldly. Gu Yunyang, you wish to use the 7-colored holy fruits to treat your grandson? You must be getting muddle-headed in your old age. Did you think that the 7-colored holy fruits are common cabbages growing in front of your yard? Chao Guofeng was naturally anxious. Right now, in the misty illusory manner, only 2 people of the younger generation had the qualifications to consume the 7-colored holy fruits. One was his own disciple Mo Jun Yi, while the other was the similarly gifted Miao Xiao Miao. And each time the 7-colored holy fruits ripened, only 2 batches would be produced. The 2 of them just took 1 batch each. If Gu Yunyang also occupied 1 batch, then there would definitely be one among the 2 of them who would not get to eat the fruits in the next 500 years. That meant that the person would have to wait another 500 years. Just like that, it would be a total of 1 years. The Miao family was deeply rooted in the misty illusory manner from the ancient days. While Miao Xiao Miao was the #1 genius of the misty illusory manner, whether or not she would get the fruits was basically a matter that didn't even need consideration. Chao Guofeng, you still don't have the right to interfere with what this old man wants to do. Gu Yunyang retorted icily. As for whether the manor lord is willing to give this old man some face is none of your business. Gu Yunyang felt extremely conflicted in his heart as well. He didn't wish to offend Chao Guofeng if he could help it. After all, the both of them were saint emperors, and their relationship was not bad. But at this juncture, they already couldn't care that much. If the free and natural physique did not consume the holy fruits, his cultivation speed would surely slow down, being quite likely to affect the grand scheme of things in the entire misty illusory manner. However, his grandson was similarly important to him. Forgive me, Senior Gu, but this matter is not up to my decision. Miao Xiao Miao replied tactfully. However, I will be sure to tell father and grandfather about this matter when I return. Gu Yunyang sighed forlornly and nodded. Since it's like that, let's leave it up to the heavens to decide. Picking up his grandson, his body shook as he jumped out of the window, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Before leaving, he did not even leave behind a single word. Miao Xiao Miao's words could be said to have left much to the imagination. She only said that she would tell her family about this matter. But was she going to talk about the dispute today? Or was she going to mention the matter of Gu Yunyang's request for the holy fruits? If it was the former, it wouldn't matter even if she told it in greater detail. Or rather, there wasn't even the need to recount the matter in great detail. So on certain levels, this sentence had been the equivalent of rejecting Gu Yunyang. What kind of a character was Gu Yunyang? How could a deep, profound schemer like himself not be able to hear the true meaning in those words? Thus, old man Gu did not stay around to invite his own humiliation, directly leaving with his grandson. The sooner treatment was administered, the less the lasting damage would be. With Miao Xiao Miao blocking the way, there was already no more hope for the 7-colored holy fruits. Chao Guofeng smiled lightly and turned around to look at Jun Moxie. Then, he turned to look at Miao Xiao Miao. The more he looked, the more delighted he became, smiling happily as he winked. Since there's nothing else, this old man will be going now. Jun Yi, come back quickly after you finish playing outside. This time, I explicitly informed you not to create trouble, but to think that you'd still manage to stir up some trouble. After that, he turned to Miao Xiao Miao with a warm smile. Little girl Miao, my disciple has just arrived and is still not familiar with our Miao Xiao Miao. If you have nothing to do, this old man would like to trouble you to bring this boy around for some sightseeing. Miao Xiao Miao just so happened to be extremely interested in Jun Moxie and was hoping to find the chance to feel him out. So she instantly agreed. Chao Guofeng was just about to leave when he suddenly realized that he'd forgotten something. Thinking for a moment, he asked, Right. Where's Wang Neng and Li Jia who were supposed to be following you? Jun Moxie pursed his lips and replied nonchalantly. The two of them, I'm not sure where they went. At the same time, he thought to himself, those two might be sitting in a jail cell somewhere now. There's no point looking for them. Hearing that, Chao Guofeng snorted with rage. When those two return, I will most definitely punish them heavily. Not only did they ignore the serious matter I'd entrusted them with, they actually went off by themselves to play. What's the use in keeping the two of them? Shaking his head, he soared away with a schwa sound, disappearing into the distance. Seeing two Saint Emperors leave just like that, the inn was suddenly only left with Miao Xiao Miao, Little Beansprout, and Jun Moxie. The three looked at each other awkwardly, no one willing to speak first. In that moment, the entire room fell into complete silence. Jun Moxie rubbed his nose, thinking to himself that it was somewhat of a pity that this little lass was acting so mysteriously, covering half her face with a veil. It was so difficult to figure out her appearance, almost as if he were trying to gaze at a mountain through a fog. However, staying silent like this was not a solution. Forget it. This young master still has some virtue of patience. I'll break the ice then. Two missus. What matter is it that you've called me up here for? Jun Moxie only finally recalled that it had been the two of them who had invited him up here initially. As for what matter it was, They hadn't said until now. The moment he came up, he'd been involved in a quarrel, and even forced his opponent into an unconscious state. The entire sequence of events had indeed been quite unexpected. However, he at least had an excuse to speak now. It's actually nothing much. Right now, Miao Xiao Miao thought through her words several times before speaking, seemingly being extremely cautious with everything she said. This Mo Jun Yi, great genius Mo, may look simple and honest, but in reality, he has a stomach full of schemes and dangerous plots. If provoked, it will not be a laughing matter. This fellow could deliver a vicious bite at any time, the kind that would tear skin and shred flesh. It is best not to offend him. In any case, there didn't seem to be a need for that. I just heard from my seniors that a wondrous talent like young Master Mo had come to our misty illusory manor, adding another young hero with boundless future to our ranks. Thus, I developed the inclination to get acquainted with young Master. Unexpectedly, such a huge incident happened, ruining my initial intentions. It's truly embarrassing. Ah, her. Miss is truly overly praising me. Jun Moxie laughed dryly and said, honestly, there's really nothing very amazing about me. I'm just a normal person, with one mouth, one nose, and two eyes. Apart from being a little more handsome than normal people, I still feel pain when getting hit. If I get slashed by a sword, I will still die. Miss must feel a little disappointed now that you've seen me in person, right? Miao Xiao Miao widened her eyes, only managing to stammer out a few words. And no, not disappointed. That's good. That's good. Jun Moxie breathed a sigh of relief in a happy manner as he said to himself. I thought that I wasn't as handsome as before. Looks like my charm is still there. What a relief. On the side, little Beansprout giggled a little. Hearing young Master Jun praise himself like that, Miao Xiao Miao also covered her mouth and smiled. Young Master Jun scratched his head and made a tsk sound with his tongue. It's truly tiring to look at you all laugh. If you want to laugh, just laugh. Why is there the need to cover your mouth and tilt your head to the side, afraid of making a little sound? Look at me. It's only enjoyable if you laugh like this. After saying that, he raised his head and gathered his chi through his dantian as he laughed aloud. Ha! 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 Laughter was truly contagious. The two adorable Lolas finally could not endure anymore as they clutched their stomachs and roared with laughter, their sides cramping until they couldn't stand straight. How come you laugh like this? It seems that my style is a bit difficult for you. Young Master Jun furrowed his brows lightly, seemingly in deep thought for a while before he said seriously. Or you can try to laugh like this. It may be more suitable for you. After saying that, he raised his head, squeezed his eyebrows together, and laughed. Ha 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 ha. The actions and tone of this laughter mimicked Stephen Chow's perfectly, laughing exaggeratedly while moving the shoulders back and forth. His expression was exceedingly rich and comical. Ha 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 ha. The two ladies no longer cared about their appearance as they smacked the table and laughed uproariously. Their entire faces were tinged with red, and their little peach-like mouths were opened wide. Even the sight of their pink little tongues could be seen jumping with enjoyment. See, isn't it satisfying to laugh like that? Isn't it comfortable? Do you feel much more relaxed? Much more gratified? Jun Moxie thought with a deadpan expression, that is the release of your true self. If you want to laugh, just let loose and laugh. Laughter is a thing that originates from happiness. If you still want to control yourself when you're joyful, What is the meaning in that kind of smile? Jun Moxie's voice grew slightly more solemn as he continued. Humans live for only a mere fleeting moment in the face of the immensity of the heavens and earth. It is filled with sorrow, with joyful moments being rare and far between. Whether it be the pain of the separation of life and death, or love, hatred, enmity, and friendship, life is filled with innumerable trials and unpredictable moments. Thus, we must grab hold of every happy moment and smile joyfully and wholeheartedly. Because after you laugh this time, it's hard to tell when the next opportunity to laugh will be. His words were somewhat heavy, resonating with the hearts of the two ladies. Miao Xiao Miao sighed lightly and nodded. Indeed, there are truly too few moments in life that are worthy of a good laughter, whereas moments for pain and heartache are in great abundance. Brother Mo's words have indeed touched on the true meaning of life's 5 flavors. Previously, she'd only been calling young Master Jun as young Master Mo. But in this moment, she'd unknowingly changed her form of address to Brother Mo. Clearly, their relationship had become a step closer. Jun Moxie chuckled and smiled. Dare I ask, Miss Miao, before today, when was the last time you laughed? Can you still remember? A look of deep thought appeared in Miao Xiao Miao's eyes, slowly turning into pain and hurt as she shook her head. I don't remember, truly. Jun Moxie sighed lightly and looked at her. Life is like a dream, passing in the twinkling of an eye. The black hair of yesterday turns white as snow today. When pleased with oneself, one should enjoy it to the greatest extent. Otherwise, wouldn't it be wasting these short tens of years of youth? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 945. Who is dancing above the clouds? Little Beansprout laughed happily and said, Young Master Mo, your words are wrong. Our Miss's youth is not just a short tens of years. Our Miss had consumed the exquisite lotus and 7-colored holy fruit together, so her youth will keep for at least 500 years without declining. Little Beansprout, be quiet. Miao Xiao Miao warned in a low voice as she turned apologetically to Jun Moxie. Little Beansprout is young and doesn't understand many things. Young master, please do not mind. Being young and innocent is the best period of one's life. I can't help but to admire it, much less mind it. If it's envy, I'll admit that I truly am somewhat jealous of her. Jun Moxie said with a suave smile. That young master can speak so carefreely. It can be seen that young master has a pure heart. Can Xiao Miao ask also, when was the last time that young master had laughed so wholeheartedly like this? Miao Xiao Miao asked in return. The last time I laughed? That'd be yesterday, if we're not counting this morning before I met you all. Jun Moxie smiled lightly and said. I remind myself constantly that the world is already at such a state. Just being able to continue living and breathing is already a great fortune that is worth laughing happily over. Thus, I would laugh every day. Not only that, it would try to infect those around me to laugh along with me as well. Jun Moxie looked at her and smiled. Just by laughing a little every day, look at how many worries disappear. It doesn't matter if the troubles are really gone, as long as I believe it. Young master is truly open-minded. Xiao Miao is incomparably envious and jealous. A sad look fleeted swiftly across Miao Xiao Miao's pupils, quickly returning to normal again. Now that young master has arrived at the misty illusory manor. My guess is that you already know the importance of your free and natural physique to us. I wonder what others plans young master has in the future. She lifted her head slowly and looked unblinkingly into Jun Moxie's eyes as she continued. We know that young master is immensely gifted in cultivation. And today, we saw the intricate and deep thoughts of young master's mind and the resolution and decisiveness with which you deal with matters. But I wonder, how is young master's literary talent? Do you prefer for me to be outstanding in literary talents? Or do you wish for me to be a bag of straw? Jun Moxie asked with a slight smile. Young master jests. Miao Xiao Miao's face flushed faintly as a coy look flashed across her eyes. Can young master perhaps recite a poem or sing a song about your aspirations for this little girl to appraise? Jun Moxie exclaimed internally with praise as he heard this. If it was just normal speech, it was easy for him to spout lies all day long. But if it was about composing a poem on the spot, the difficulty was much higher. It would naturally be his true thoughts. Because poems were the voice of the heart. In such a short time, no one would be able to write something that didn't conform to their true feelings. The request of this lass was first, to test his literary standards, and second, to find out his true thoughts and intentions. As she was scared that he would come up with a lie to humor her, she came up with this method. He was a person with the free and natural physique, as well as a character with wit which surpassed the masses. His methods were also decisive and ruthless. Clearly, this was the current impression that lass has of him. But if it was just that, it was still possible to arrange a strategy to target his weakness. The scary thing would be, if such a person was also cultured and talented in literature. In that case, I might as well take the opportunity to shock you properly. Jun Moxie fell silent for a moment, and he began in a long voice. Though man bow and live according to the will of the heavens, they might beget no salvation. Those who defy the heavens should look to the skies and laugh. Who can be like me, creating great billows in the world with a point of my sword? As he spoke here, he paused and continued. The sun and moon are in my arms. Watch as I rise above the crowd with my excellence. With my sword unsheathed, who dares to traverse the clouds alongside me? One sword confining lofty sentiments of 1,000 ages. Wild gales sweeping freely across the yellow sands. Rain of blood. Pungent winds. Man shall not fall. One sword conquering the world. Tyrant of 1,000 ages proclaimed as a hero. Standing loftily, I swear with my sword, in this life, we do not bow. Who is dancing above the clouds? Let my gaze be cast past the edge of the sky, with deep sorrow in my guts, and my heart cold and covered with frost. The music is over and the audience is gone. One sword piercing through the 9 firmaments in fury. Ancient and modern, roaming the world with the same smile on my face. All who follow after in the future shall never more reach greater heights. His voice rang out loud and fierce, like a killing aura from a great general on the battlefield. Just by listening to his words, one could already feel their blood boiling with passion. When he finished, the two were completely dumbfounded. Miao Xiao Miao had not imagined that this fellow was actually so highly talented in both the pen and the sword, as well as possessing such high intelligence. Not mentioning the misty illusory manner, even considering the entire world, how many of such outstanding youths could be found? How many people could make such poetry featuring lines of 7 characters intermixed with longer and shorter lines in such a short time? Not mentioning his natural physical aptitude, courage, wit, and potential, just his extraordinary literary talent was enough to cause others to view him differently. However, that ambition of his seemed to be a bit too mad. Who is dancing above the clouds? Let my gaze be cast past the edge of the sky, with deep sorrow in my guts, and my heart cold and covered with frost. Meow xiao meow muttered softly. Her memory was quite good. So even though Jun Moxie had only recited the poem once, she'd already remembered it clearly. But as she recited it again now, this same sentence had a feeling of chivalry and unyielding spirit. The more Meow Xiao Meow recited, the more she felt that this sentence was filled with a deep sorrow. It was actually capable of making a person feel a sour pain in their hearts when they thought of it. Who is dancing above the clouds? Let my gaze be cast past the edge of the sky, with deep sorrow in my guts, and my heart cold and covered with frost. As the gods danced and feasted above the clouds, they were on the ground, gazing anxiously till their eyes were worn out, yet not being able to see. Their guts were twisted with sorrow and bitterness, while their hearts were frosted over, devoid of hope and filled with disappointment. After a long time, Meow Xiao Meow spat out a long breath of air and said with a bitter smile, "Brother Mo, words flow from your mouth as from the pen of a master. Truly amazing this little sister feels incomparably ashamed of my inferiority." Jun Moxie laughed aloud and said modestly, "It's just an insignificant ability. How can it be worthy of being claimed as works of a master?" This Mo is lucky for Miss to have taken a liking to those sentences. It was a fortune that I've once followed an old master in the mountains and learned some words from him for a few years. Otherwise, I might have embarrassed myself in front of Miss Meow today. Young Master Jun was speaking from his heart this time. His accomplishments in the literature field were all thanks to the impartation of his assassin master. Whenever he thought of that old fellow, Jun Moxie would still recall a stinging sensation on his B*TT. As for that poem, it was the work of a great master in his previous life whose name he'd already forgotten. The only reason he'd remembered this particular poem was because he liked the bold and heroic spirit depicted through it. Who would have thought that it would become useful here? This time, he'd only changed a few sentences and recited the whole thing out. As expected, it achieved a shocking effect. Right now, the way that little beansprout was looking at Jun Moxie had already changed into a look of worship. Too cool. Too awesome. Too talented. If I could marry such a husband. Ayaya. What am I thinking of? How embarrassing. Brother Mo is too modest. Meow Xiao Meow smiled lightly and said, "The person who taught young master to read and write must have been a great master of a generation, a learned scholar of great profundity and virtue. On top of that, he has the courage of a sword, a soft heart for the world, with great strength of character. A person like that, just thinking about it makes one's heart ache." Meow Xiao Meow did not dare to praise Jun Moxie in front of him, in case he mistook it for other intentions, thus, she'd switched to praising his master instead. Jun Moxie was stunned. This time, he wasn't acting at all. He was truly stunned. He'd never imagined that there would actually be someone in this world who would praise that old fellow so much. That old fellow was simply a hardcore executioner, a classic butcher. His heart was colder than ice and so ruthless that others would be scared to death by him. And now, he'd actually become a learned scholar of great profundity and virtue, a great master of a generation, and furthermore, the courage of a sword, a soft heart for the world, with great strength of character. Feck. Those words are more appropriate if you're talking about this young master. How could you use it to describe that old butcher? That's completely desecrating those words. Ah. Still, after not seeing that old fellow for so many years, he did miss him somewhat in this moment. As he reminisced, Jun Moxie seemed to be able to see that pair of sharp, blade-like eyes in front of him again, brimming with frigid killing intent. Those parched lips and that sallow face, staring at him sternly. Little brat. Are you skiving off again? See if this old man doesn't fix you up. A familiar wind rushed past his face as he thought back to that voice. Young Master Jun shivered intensely, only now discovering that his eyes had become somewhat wet. That long mist, the only one, stern, but warm-hearted, old bastard. I wonder if you would drop some tears for me on the other side upon hearing that I've been blown into smithereens. He remembered back when he was first hurt, injured by a gunshot to his shoulder. The gun wound was tilted down, penetrating and hurting his lungs. That injury could have been said to have been exceedingly heavy. At that time, he still hated that old fellow to the very bone. Because he was always abused with scoldings and beatings for even the smallest matter. Even a wrong action while practicing drinking etiquette would invite a round of ruthless beating. If he was off by even a month when guessing the age of the wine, it would also be treated with violence. The Jun Xie of that time had truly taken this old man to be the greatest enemy of his life. Even his teeth hurt from the hatred. And he'd sworn countless times that the instant he had sufficient strength or the right opportunity, he would definitely tear that old bastard apart into 10,000 pieces, burning and scattering his ashes to absolve the hatred in his heart. However, that time when he was injured heavily, and his life was in danger, the old man put him in his car and sped 800 li down the road all the way to the best hospital in the city. He remembered that the old man's face was still completely expressionless at that time, deep like a bottomless lake. However, the needle of the speedometer had consistently been maintained at the most extreme end of the speed limit, never dropping even the slightest. Assassins never walked into a hospital by themselves, especially if it was regarding a gunshot wound. In the few days that Jun Moxie had been in the hospital, he'd never seen that old man again. In his fuzzy memory while he was badly hurt, he only remembered that the old man had told him sternly, "You must remember this. You were shot by a stray bullet on the beach. You're the son of a fisherman and an orphan." Even until he was discharged, he never saw that old man. Only much later, about 1 month later, the old man suddenly returned, his entire body covered in wounds. The old fellow had actually broken out of jail to return. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 946. Life is long in sadness as water keeps flowing east. In order for Jun Xie to survive and get the best medical treatment, the old man had sent him to the hospital without hesitation. His identity was checked. And then, naturally, he was imprisoned. Jun Xie could cover himself with a lie, but the old man couldn't. The old scars on his body, as well as the frigid killing intent around him body were simply too problematic, exposing him very quickly. After expending great efforts to break out of jail and return, the old man actually did not say a single word about the matter. It was as if nothing had happened at all. The training was still as strict, and if he lacked in any area, the old man would still beat and scold him, calling him a little bastard. But ever since, Jun Xie knew one thing for certain, that old man was the only person that he could truly rely on. For a man, there was no need to say such stuff, because he simply needed to show them with his actions. Miao Xiao Miao's casual words had unintentionally stirred up the deepest memories in Jun Moxie's heart. It was also the only past memory that would give him a sense of warmth whenever he thought of it. Jun Moxie sunk into silence and a faint but long-lasting light appeared in his eyes. A happy expression hung on his face, and his eyes seemed to be staring at a faraway place, like a dream. It seemed to be that in this split second, he'd entered a world of his own. Miao Xiao Miao's clear eyes stared at young Master Jun quietly, her eyes becoming softer and gentler. For a long time, she did not make a single sound, not interrupting him, allowing Jun Moxie to immerse himself in recollection. After a long time, Jun Moxie raised his head, and his eyes gradually grew more steady again. Looking at Miao Xiao Miao, he smiled lightly. I suddenly remembered some past matters and lost myself for a moment. I've incurred Mrs. ridicule. The revealing of true feelings is the mark of a pure-hearted person. Young Master was being true to himself. So how can there be any ridicule? Young Master should have remembered some matters that were worth remembering. Miao Xiao Miao's eyes were warm and gentle as she asked lightly. Jun Moxie nodded and sucked in a deep breath of air. Yes, there are always some things in life that can never be forgotten. Because those matters are worth remembering. But oftentimes, it is exactly these things that we feel is worth remembering that brings us pain whenever we think of them. Yet, we are forever unwilling to forget. Miao Xiao Miao listened quietly, not speaking for a while. Finally, she smiled and said in a soft voice. However, if there's one or several of these kinds of people or events that we can reminisce about, it's still a fortunate matter. Because the saddest thing is that a person did not meet even one person like that or experience an event special enough to be remembered. That is the most pitiful. Your words are indeed true. Jun Moxie smiled and asked. Does Miss Miao also have the same feelings as well? Do you have an event that is worth you remembering? Or perhaps, a person? Miao Xiao Miao's eyes quietly landed on his face, and after a long time, she slowly shifted her gaze away, and she looked silently at the window. After a moment's pause, she answered. There is, not. Interesting. Interesting. Mrs. words are truly hard to grasp. Saying there is first. Then saying not, so is there. Or is there not? Haha. Jun Moxie laughed with interest. Miao Xiao Miao did not smile this time and turned back to look at him silently. Then, she turned her eyes away again and sighed sadly. Soon, the spring splendor fades. From the flowers in the woods too soon. There's no stopping the chill rain at dawn, or the shrill wind at night. The memories of the rouge-colored tears, of the stays overnight amid cups. When will all that happen again? Life is long in sadness as water keeps flowing and flowing east, her. First, Jun Moxie recited and sighed, before laughing self-mockingly. Looks like Miss should prefer this kind of graceful and subdued poem of spring's grief and autumn's sorrow more. Perhaps my previous random poem had been too heavy. May Miss not take it to heart. Miao Xiao Miao's shoulders trembled lightly, and she felt an impulse to retort a few words. I, Miao Xiao Miao, am not a typical girl. A normal girl might like poems like that, but it might not be so for me. Whether a poem is good or not, I can naturally distinguish for myself. That previous poem was bold and grand, and it's too much to be called mere random words. Could it be that you don't know that being overly modest is just pretentious? However, when she heard Jun Moxie's second poem, she could not help but to mull it through silently in her heart, not having the courage to retort. This poem is simply too melancholic. Just reciting it gave her a feeling that this poem contained a helplessly sorrowful intent. The intent in this poem was as difficult to grasp as the sand on the beach. It was like a layer of mist which veiled her eyes and clouded her heart, enrapturing her and causing her to feel dreamy and sorrowful, as though she was drunk. Soon, the spring splendor fades. From the flowers in the woods too soon. There's no stopping the chill rain at dawn, or the shrill wind at night. Meow xiao meow said quietly, beautiful lashes fluttering lightly as a hazy look hung in her eyes. Life is long in sadness as water keeps flowing and flowing east. AI. Meow xiao meow closed her eyes. Her heart filled with endless sourness. She didn't know why she had such an unbearable feeling. Could it be that a short poem like this actually culminated the most unspeakable, helpless feelings of life, even rousing the most deeply hidden emotions in her heart? She was like a resplendent flower in full bloom. But she was helplessly entangled in the red dust of this mundane world as time flowed past her like the sun and moon in her hair. There were even countless lecherous people staring at her in the dark, as a tiger watched its prey. As for her family, they had never truly made preparations for her future happiness. She was immensely talented, but it only became a greater chip for them to bargain and exchange for benefits. The world thinks that my position and authority is high, being the daughter of the misty illusory manor lord, and well loved by all. How carefree must my life be? But the true grief of one in my position, who can understand it? Truly. There's no stopping the chill rain at dawn, or the shrill wind at night. In a cruel world such as this, how long can such a resplendent flower retain its splendor? The moment the petals fall and the beauty fade, that would really be when life is long in sadness as water keeps flowing and flowing east. This Mo Jun Xie. Could he actually be trying to make me cry on purpose? After listening to his words, why do my eyes grow wet and my nose sour? How did I lose control of my emotions to this extent? I've already reached the superior supreme realm and am only a half step away from breaking free of the supreme realm. There's even the exquisite lotus and 7-colored holy fruits effects which calm and steady my mind. I should have been freed from the control of my emotions long ago. But why am I still so affected? Meow xiao meow lowered her brows. And her brows fluttered lightly. Her heart was a mess. And she didn't know what was happening to herself. She could not find the reason. And it made her more anxious. Miss. It's getting dark. And I should return. If there's nothing else, this one will bid farewell first. What kind of wit did Jun Moxie possess? Seeing that he'd accomplished enough today, he decided to stop. With a pat of his B*TT, he turned around to leave. If he continued to fool around, that would be overdoing it. Wait. Brother Mo. Please wait. Meow xiao meow's eyes instantly returned to its calm. On the side, little Beansprout had grabbed a paper and quill at an unknown time, recording young Master Jun's 2 poems entirely without missing a single word. Jun Moxie glanced at her briefly, seeing that this little lowly's tender white hands were writing energetically as she gripped the quill. Her words were beautiful and neat, seemingly having some skill. Does Miss Meow still have any matters to talk about? Jun Moxie stopped and looked at Meow xiao meow. He knew all along that this lass had definitely not looked for him just to make some so-called acquaintance. There was surely some deeper reason. But since the other party did not wish to talk about it first, he naturally would not ask. If he really took the initiative to ask, he would not hold the advantage and would be forced into a reactive state. How would Jun Moxie be willing to do that? A strange look flashed in Meow xiao meow's eyes, finally steeling herself and regaining clarity of mind. It was as if she'd come to a decision. Raising her head, she said, Brother Mo, please do not blame Xiao Meow for speaking straightforwardly though we've just met. Dare I ask if Brother Mo has offended anyone? Or perhaps, do you know how many people you've offended? Offended who? I've just arrived here and am still unfamiliar with the place. Who could I offend? Jun Moxie scratched his head with some confusion. If I've offended anyone, it would just be young Master Gu. Didn't I thoroughly offend Gu Fei Yu today? Behind him, there's also the entire Gu family. Little sister is not talking about Gu Fei Yu's matter. Rather, it's before you came here. Miao Xiao Miao said. No. Definitely not. I'm never a person who likes to provoke trouble, and don't have the capabilities to offend many people as well. Where would I go to offend people? Jun Moxie shook his head firmly. At first, he thought of mentioning the matter with the city's officials. But as he thought about it again, those fellows were definitely not any high-level characters. How could they be worthy of Miao Xiao Miao's attention? But apart from that, he truly didn't seem to have offended anyone else. So Brother Mo truly does not know. Miao Xiao Miao looked at him suspiciously. After a while, she finally confirmed. This fellow truly didn't know about that matter. Smiling bitterly, she said. In the instant Brother Mo left the inner city today, this news had already spread to all the large families. Oh. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows. Miao Xiao Miao's words could be said to be a hint for him. Jun Moxie also naturally understood in an instant, someone from Chao Guofeng's side must have leaked the news in secret. Otherwise, it was impossible for the news to travel so quickly to all the large families. That's the reason why so many young masters all came out, arriving at the inner city at practically the same time. Miao Xiao Miao said with a faint smile. No wonder. The moment he came out today, he'd so, coincidentally, bumped into two of the biggest, do not provoke, characters. So that was the case. I knew that there's no way my luck was that good. Looks like everyone had come together to arrange this scene. Jun Moxie sucked in a deep breath of air. Brother Mo needs to know that originally, there was supposed to be a talent selection event in the misty illusory manor scheduled in these few days to pick out the most outstanding geniuses and send them to the inner manor to be nurtured as the leader of the next generation. In other words, the entire misty illusory manor was actually making preparations for the future before you came. But your arrival, your free and natural physique, had directly spoilt this plan for everyone. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 947. Target for all. Miao Xiao Miao smiled lightly and said, among this batch of people, there are some people with great chances of becoming the future Heart Fantasy City's city lord. Some are preparing to be the future spiritual Herbal Gardens lord. Others are going to be the future members of the Council of Elders. And some are aiming to become the future Manor Lord. There are even some who are fighting to become the future top expert of the misty illusory manor, the next generation's guardian saint. And your accidental arrival disrupted the situation which had stabilized. Miao Xiao Miao's eyes grew serious as she looked at Jun Moxie and explained. Although she'd explained it in a slow way, Jun Moxie could understand the underlying meanings very clearly. It turned out that he'd fallen into a super tensed explosive keg, and he'd even turned into a target for all. The free and natural physique that you have is a heaven-defying miraculous gift that hasn't appeared in 10,000 years. Tying you to our misty illusory manor is naturally the choice for us. That is a fact, and one that nobody can refute. In fact, all the older generation seniors are in full support of you being the number one choice for propping up the entire misty illusory manor in the future. But at the same time, you've also become the strongest competitor for all the factions in here, standing in direct opposition to all of them. Especially the other juniors. Them recognizing your talent and qualifications is one matter, But for them to acknowledge your position is a whole other matter. Miao Xiao Miao's petite body was unusually straight. From Jun Moxie's direction, she looked like a flawless sculpture. Every single aspect was perfect to the extreme. Even if an exceedingly picky artist looked at her, he wouldn't be able to find the slightest problem. But it was her words that found their way into young Master Jun's heart. So from the first day you came, one thing was determined. That is, no matter what action you take, there will be countless people watching you, determined to not let you succeed smoothly. Only by kicking you down can others have the opportunity to climb up. Otherwise, everyone's paths are simply destined to be blocked by you. Before you truly ascended to the peak of the misty illusory manor, challenges like this will be abound without pause. At any time and any place. Miao Xiao Miao looked at him seriously. Jun Moxie could only listen on with a parched expression, his head splitting with pain. The strengths of these people were naturally nothing much to him. But the problem was that with him being watched so closely, how would he be able to smoothly continue with his plan? Sneaking into the spiritual herbal gardens and stealing some 7-colored holy fruits? How truly infuriating. Could it be that he must be stared to death by those bunch of idiots? Not mentioning the future. Let's just take today for example. Because of this outing that you took with high spirits today, those talented disciples of the misty illusory manor large families have gathered in Heart Fantasy City. By tomorrow, more people will have arrived. Miao Xiao Miao laughed a little for some reason and continued. I will not hide this from you. Among these people, I am included as well. Although I am also a person with intentions, they are not necessarily bad. Because I will not fight over anything with you. If I have any intention of obtaining something, even young Master Mo will not be able to snatch it away from me. Today's invitation was purely out of curiosity towards young Master. To be able to attract the attention of so many large powers the moment you came. Becoming the target of the entire illusory manor, I was curious about what kind of person you were. Miao Xiao Miao suddenly started explaining herself for some reason. Only after she finished explaining did she realize, why did I explain myself to him? How come it feels like I'm demonstrating a show of force to him? Like I'm trying to tell him my aloofness? That I'm standing on the same side as him? But it's because I'm afraid that he will misunderstand me. But why am I afraid of him misunderstanding me? What am I thinking? The more she thought, the wilder her thoughts became, and her face turned red for some reason. So that's the case. No wonder it's so lively today. And it's going to be even more lively tomorrow? Jun Moxie laughed, feeling somewhat smug in his heart. An outstanding person is indeed an outstanding person. There's no helping it. Everywhere this young master goes, I will inevitably become the center of attention. The moment I arrived here, everyone gathered for my sake. How amazing was that? What are capabilities? Aren't these capabilities? With Saint Emperor Chao's abilities, he would definitely have thought of this when he allowed you to come out this time. However, Senior still didn't stop you. Miao Xiao Miao said. Because Senior Chao knew that you would have to come out sooner or later. You would be thrown into chaos no matter what. So he might as well let you experience it a little earlier. Without experiencing the winds and rain, how would one witness a rainbow? Preparing earlier is better than being caught by surprise. That was why he only chose to follow secretly behind you, not appearing to help you out. Well, he's clearly returned already this time. But there are still so many unsettled matters. What should I do? So many people dislike me. Isn't my little life now in danger? Jun Moxie said in a distraught manner. Young master must be joking. The second most unprovocable person in the misty illusory manner has already been ruthlessly slapped away by you. What else is there for Saint Emperor Chao to be worried about? Besides, the most those people can do is to use very roundabout matters to humiliate you and prove their superiority to you. They would never dare to kill you. Saint Emperor Chao could naturally leave with a peace of mind. Miao Xiao Miao explained, while her face grew redder and redder. The reason Chao Guofeng had returned was clearly because he was much less worried about this disciple of his. But the main reason was that Jun Moxie was with Miao Xiao Miao now. Miao Xiao Miao would certainly not let Jun Moxie leave alone while facing so much danger. Because she was also bearing the responsibility of her father and grandfather sending her to probe this peerless super genius. And this so-called probe was not just about his talent. It included his personality, temperament, how he carried himself, how he treated his friends and enemies, everything about his person. Young genius Mo's talent had already been determined long ago, and there was no longer any need to continue investigating. And this probe was also the true reason Miao Xiao Miao had invited him over this time. There were naturally advantages and disadvantages for the two of them being together. The disadvantage was naturally that the people who disliked him would find him even more irksome. The schemes they were planning would undoubtedly become much more poisonous. Furthermore, he would probably attract an even greater number of haters. Of course, the advantage was not small as well. Sticking with Miao Xiao Miao was undoubtedly equal to obtaining an extra protective charm. And with Miao Xiao Miao around, it didn't matter how much those people hated this free and natural physique genius or what kind of schemes they hatched. All of it could only be used in the dark. If they tried to bully him too brazenly, all of them would be in huge trouble if Miao Xiao Miao went back and complained. Furthermore, judging by the way Jun Moxie dealt with Gu Feiyu, Saint Emperor Chao was quite sure that not many people in the misty illusory manner could make things difficult for that little young master. Thus, he directly relaxed and went back to take a nap. If you really want to establish your position in the misty illusory manner, you have to pass through this trial before you. Furthermore, you need to rely on your own strength to pass through it. If you rely on outside strength to seize a position, those people will never give up. Miao Xiao Miao said seriously. With my own strength? No way. I don't even know what kind of grand feasts those proud young masters have prepared for a countryside bumpkin like me. Jun Moxie said with some interest. Miao Xiao Miao smiled mysteriously and looked at him. I have no intentions of revealing that stuff to young Master Mo. After all, obtaining free information from me is also a form of outside help. In any case, you'll find out for yourself sooner or later. However, I can give you warning in advance. The place we're going to next can be said to be a gathering of distinguished aristocrats. Although Gu Feiyu is the second most unprovocable person in the misty illusory manner, it's merely an overly inflated opinion of the crowd. Furthermore, he's a loner and his character is also clearly weak. Defeating him is not any difficult matter. But what you're about to face is a capable group of people with similarly great foundations. Among them, there are all kinds of talents well versed in all manners of literary arts, music, martial arts, and other things. If you want to defeat them all with the strength of a single person, it's virtually impossible, unless there are truly miracles in this world. A strange look of concern flashed in Miao Xiao Miao's eyes. Before this, her thoughts hadn't been much different from those people, and she was also waiting to see this free and natural physique get humiliated. But now, she was actually very anxious to see Jun Moxie defeat them, completing this impossible miracle. Somehow, she no longer wanted to see him being embarrassed or humiliated. Just thinking about that scene caused her to feel uncomfortable in her heart. Such a switch in attitude could be said to be extremely sudden and unexpected, to a point where even she felt shocked. She even felt somewhat scared that such a thought had appeared in her heart, and she couldn't understand what was going on. How did her normally calm self become like this? To actually talk and laugh so freely with an unfamiliar guy. So troublesome. But why must I defeat them? What's the point of defeating them? Jun Moxie said with some disdain. Am I that free and bored? Why should I go over to play with trash for nothing? Not mentioning that it's time and effort consuming. I even have to offend a bunch of people. And there aren't even any benefits to obtain. Why should I go and do something so stupid? Does everyone take me for a retard? Miao Xiao Miao was stumped. In her knowledge, as long as someone raised a challenge, whether it be for the pride as a Xian cultivator or just to vent their indignance, there was usually no way for retreat, and they had to accept the challenge. But she'd never thought that this free and natural physique guy would actually reject so cleanly. A single word of rejection had thoroughly killed off this path. That's right. Ah. All of you came prepared and in great strength clearly for the purpose of bullying me. Can it be that I can't hide away if I can't face you? The strength of both sides are unfair, but you expect others to face you head on. Bullying the few with the strength of many, coming with malicious intent, and still not allowing others to dodge. If I really accepted your challenge, I would really be an idiot. Those words are not wrong. Miao Xiao Miao instantly opened her eyes wide. By simply dodging this battle, Mo Junyi would not only not have his reputation spoiled, it was in fact the wisest decision. If that large group of arrogant young masters were all stood up by this young master Mo, that would truly be a sight to see. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 948. The chance to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Normally, your choice of avoiding conflict is right. However, there are reasons why you have to go this time. Firstly, if you do not turn up, it is equivalent to you fooling all of them. You will break connections with all the heirs of the big families, and the situation may not thaw within the next few decades. It will produce a lot of resistance to your future progress. Deep in her heart, Miao Xiao Miao actually agreed with his decision. However, she was rational enough to know the consequences if he didn't go. Besides that, there's another reason. Another reason? Jun Moxie frowned. Can you elaborate? Do you still remember the two guards who followed you out? They are disciples of Saint Emperor Chao. You ordered them to kill 8 city officials, and this landed them in custody as Zhan Yushu accused them of murdering public officials. If you don't go, it will be brought up to the highest jurisdiction level of the Misty Illusory Manor, and the two of them will be punished. After all, the two of them were following your orders, and if you don't explain them, I'm sure you will get in trouble with Saint Emperor Chao as well. Miao Xiao Miao sounded concerned. What are you talking about? When did I even order them to kill anyone? This is framing. The two of them committed murder of their own will. It has nothing to do with me. Jun Moxie laughed scornfully. Getting punished for murder is a natural thing, and I believe there are strict laws in the Misty Illusory Manor. There should be no exceptions under the law. As for Saint Emperor Chao, I'm sure he will understand that it is more important for me to follow the legislation and not influence the justice system. So what you've said is incorrect. Don't tell me that the laws don't bind the big families of the Misty Illusory Manor. Jun Moxie reminded earnestly and even questioned the integrity of the big families. Miao Xiao Miao was immediately astounded. What's he trying to do? Why is everything the other way around in what he claims? Jun Xie thought he had obtained a trump card against Jun Moxie. How could he expect that it's totally useless against Jun Moxie? Not only that, Jun Moxie even questioned them back. How aggressive. And, he really doesn't care about the two guards? Aren't they fellow disciples of Saint Emperor Chao? Is Jun Moxie so heartless? Those two guards had followed Saint Emperor Chao for decades. Even if they had no significant achievements, they had definitely put in much effort. So what Jun Moxie was saying sounded extremely heartless and cruel. Instantly, there was a tremendous wave of disappointment that washed up her chest. Jun Moxie's cruelty is unforgivable. Miao Xiao Miao's face flushed with anger. Brother Mo, do you really take the lives of your fellow peers so lightly? Even if you didn't know them beforehand, they are still related to you. How can you not feel guilty if something goes wrong? Jun Moxie looked at her in surprise. He said softly, "What has happened? Ms. Miao, why are you so agitated?" It left Miao Xiao Miao speechless. She had lost her composure. What he decided to do had nothing to do with her. It was the first time she met Jun Moxie and the two guards were not related to her. Why was she so agitated? She blushed more as she didn't know what to say. She lowered her head in embarrassment. But soon, she looked up again at Jun Moxie and the disappointment and anger returned. With Miao Xiao Miao's status and experience, most people were as insignificant as ants to her. Even supreme experts like Wang Neng and Li Jia were nothing to her. In fact, if she were in the same situation as Jun Moxie, she would give up the two guards as well in consideration for her own reputation. However, the way Jun Moxie justified his choice unexpectedly infuriated her. She didn't even realize that her anger was more about the person than the thing he did. Miao Xiao Miao was experiencing an indescribable feeling. If Jun Moxie were to lose his cool and decided to face all the danger straight on, she would also be disappointed that he was being impetuous. However, Jun Moxie's blatant rejection made her more uncomfortable. He was too cool, or rather cold, to be acceptable. However, what was her real expectation? She didn't know herself. What he had decided was the most rational. Why was she questioning it? For her, it was like a perfect jewelry that sustained a small crack. The two of them, although we have the same master, ever since I arrived here, they have wished for me to die. Jun Moxie explained nonchalantly. I feel like it's not worth it to save the two of them. Why? You are the bearer of the free and natural physique. You are the disciple Saint Emperor Chao wanted for his entire life. Miao Xiao Miao suddenly realized and understood what was going on. Ah, indeed. Jun Moxie didn't say it explicitly, but the fact that the two of them always wanted to be the direct successor of Chao Guofeng was not a secret. Jun Moxie's sudden appearance took away their chance and all of their ambitions. How could they not feel resentment? What a smart girl. Jun Moxie casually praised. Miao Xiao Miao rolled her eyes at him. However, deep within her, she felt a comforting warmth. She pinched herself with her delicate hands. It's only a casual jokingly compliment. Why am I so happy? What's happening to me? Why is my state of mind fluctuating so vigorously? However, the warmth continued to flow up into her and couldn't be stopped. So what's your plan? Miao Xiao Miao struggled to control her emotions as her beautiful eyebrow outside her veil started to curl up. A plan? No plans. After my tour, it's nap time. You see, it's none of my business. It left Miao Xiao Miao speechless again. The whole misty illusory manner was stirred up by him single-handedly, and he said that it was none of his business. Anyone who heard it would uncontrollably want to laugh while shivering. Brother Mo, you indeed have some unpredictable decision-making. I've really got nothing else to say. Miao Xiao Miao smiled helplessly. If you've decided, then please go ahead. But I think I'm going to win a big time thanks to you. Win what? Jun Moxie suddenly looked anxious. It's just a bet I made today. If you don't go, I will be winning it. Miao Xiao Miao smiled on. Bet? What bet? Jun Moxie frowned in curiosity. 5 days later, the spiritual herbal gardens will be opened for the first time in 100 years. All the seniors of Miao Xiao Miao will be going there. And there's a rainbow holy tree in the garden that only bears fruit once in 500 years. 5 days later, it will be bearing its fruit. So all the saint emperors will be going there to try to plant another seedling with their powers. And on this day, they will allow one of the younger generations to enter the garden. That person will try to gain the recognition of the tree. And if he is successful, he will be the next master of the garden. Even if he isn't successful, he will still be granted the chance of entering the garden every year for the next 100 years. And there are 2 people contesting to obtain this opportunity. That's the eldest young master of the Zhan family, Zhan Qingfeng, and I. So we made a bet and the winner will be granted the chance. I see. Jun Moxie took a deep breath as he became serious. The spiritual herbal gardens. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 949. Secrets of the Rainbow Holy Tree. What I have bet was that their plan will not work. Miao Xiao Miao smiled. Since you are not even going, there's no way their plans against you will work. So I'm winning the bet. We made the bet in front of a large crowd, so there will be no room for his denial. I'm going to be granted access to the gardens every year, so even if I don't succeed this time, there will be more chances to come for me to gain recognition from the tree. I am still a bit disappointed that you refused to go. But in this sense, I still need to thank you. Miao Xiao Miao was ready to go as she finished the sentence. Wait! Jun Moxie leaped up as if he was on drugs. Who said that I am not going? Bring me there. Ha! Miao Xiao Miao stared at him. What's he up to now? With my talent, there's no way I will lose to them. Bring me there. I will not make you disappointed. Miao Xiao Miao stumbled as she felt a ball of fire getting stuck upon her chest. Is he an idiot? Wasn't he so determined to avoid the conflict? Didn't I tell him that I will win as long as he doesn't go? Although there was some disappointment within her, it was also accompanied by the satisfaction from the thought that she was going to win the bet. The disappointment was no longer bothering her. There had to be some disappointment. As she uncovered the chivalry and talent from this young man, she couldn't help feel curious about him. She wanted to know what else was he capable of. In her expectations, Mo Junyi was like a mysterious mist that hides many secrets waiting for people to discover, and all the secrets would leave her in awe and surprise. She knew that he was unique and he indeed redefined the notion of a successful young man for her. The poetic lines he came up with really touched her soul, leaving her indulged in the endless reflections triggered by them. She even had the feeling that she could spend a whole evening pondering about what he had said while admiring the sunset and enjoying fragrant tea under a flowering tree below the ever-changing clouds. How romantic. Hence, if he refused to go, she would lose the chance of knowing him more. There would definitely be some mild disappointment. On the other hand, if he really went, there was a risk that he would be humiliated. especially for his comparatively weak Xian cultivation. If that were to happen, she would be heartbroken. So his refusal relieved her from this possibility, and she was quite grateful. Furthermore, there was the bet with Zhan Qingfeng. So she was so happy that she had to share with him the joy by telling him about the bet. But he suddenly changed his mind upon hearing it. It felt like a very uncomfortable roller coaster ride to her. This bastard. He's purposely messing with me. She couldn't help cursing. Why don't you just die? Jun Moxie was satisfied as he saw her annoyed. I changed my mind because I want to save you from loneliness. Just imagine entering the vast and almost empty gardens with all those old men. How lonely and bored are you going to be? Perhaps. Another way around. This is for me to accompany you. How's that? What? You want to accompany me? Miao Xiao Miao was stunned. He wants to accompany me so that I'm not bored. That's a bit sweet. Of course. If I go with you, at least it won't be as dull. Also, I like the smell of herbs. They really refresh my mind. That's why I even grow my own herbs sometimes. Jun Moxie could really say anything to impress girls. That's an interesting idea, but it is a rule that only one person from the younger generations can enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Miao Xiao Miao was concerned. Also, the rainbow holy tree is very strict in choosing the person it recognizes. The candidate has to be less than 20 years old and must carry a scent of nature. If too many young people enter, it might become confused. Something caught Jun Moxie's attention. Do you mean the rainbow holy tree has already acquired consciousness? Yes. But its spiritual senses develop very slowly. According to my grandfather, it gained consciousness as early as 3,000 years ago. However, it is only as intelligent as a 5 years old now. So it really likes to throw tantrums. For example, if someone it doesn't like tries to take its fruit, it will hide the fruit. It is really childlike. Miao Xiao Miao sounded happy to feel helpless as she described the rainbow holy tree as if it were her naughty child. Miao Xiao Miao continued. Even the seniors who enter the gardens are not allowed to enter a certain parameter around the tree. If they do, all the herbs within that parameter will instantly wither. Only when the tree willingly allows us to plant its branches, then the seniors can communicate with it with all their xian qi so that it will produce a branch from the ground below it. After that, they will let the young candidate be observed by the tree, and if he qualifies, he will plant the branch within the parameter. The small tree that grows from the branch will be exclusively under the care of the tree itself, and no one else will be allowed to help. That's amazing. It's only a tree, but it's so domineering. Of course. Or why would the misty illusory manner hail it as the holy tree? But the rule on letting only one young candidate in, who made it? Can't there be an exception? There are no exceptions. 1,500 years ago, we sent 2 young candidates in. But the tree expelled them from the gardens with no hesitation. Then, the gardens were left unattended until 100 years ago when my father became the chosen one by coincidence. As you can see, the manager of the gardens is not appointed by the leaders of the misty illusory manor. He has to be chosen by the tree. The whole garden is like its territory. It will not let anything it doesn't approve to happen in the gardens. Even my father is not allowed to take a single herb out of the gardens without permission. I see. So how did your father become acknowledged by the tree? Jun Moxie felt that the tree would not be easy to handle. It's not a secret. Many older generations know about it. My father had a terrible physique, and the misty illusory manor had seen him as completely useless. He couldn't even make his way into the supreme level. Miao Xiao Miao smiled helplessly, as if she were pitying her father's past. Even my grandfather lost hope in him. And it was at that point of time that my father fell gravely ill. Although grandfather didn't like him much, he was still the heir of the bloodline. So my grandfather used his authority to ask for permission to bring my father in from the elders. No one had entered the gardens in 1,400 years. So there was definitely a huge amount of spiritual qi accumulated there. So it was the only hope of curing my father. The elders eventually agreed as my grandfather was very reputable. Then, the unexpected happened. After my father entered the garden, he soon recovered and the tree acknowledged him. I don't know the details, but it happened. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 950. Reject? Or agree? Miao Xiao Miao continued. I only know that after that event, my father's fate suddenly changed in a heaven-shaking and earth-shattering manner. From a piece of trash that everybody disdained to look at to someone that everybody fought over to curry favor with. His physique had also changed greatly, and he got married with mother after that. Even until now, father is still extremely grateful to the holy tree. He feels exceedingly strongly that without the tree, our family would not exist. Miao Xiao Miao smiled lightly and said in a soft voice. Naturally, there would also not be me. Your father is truly blessed by the heavens. Jun Moxie already had a rough guess in his heart. From the looks of it, this rainbow holy tree has slowly developed a consciousness after the accumulation of many long years. But this kind of young spirit's temper was still incomparably pure, with clear likes and dislikes. Someone who looked like a good person was a good person, while a villainous-looking person will be a bad person. In addition, without anyone to guide it, it was willful and slowly developed extreme personalities. As for Miao Xiao Miao's father, Jun Moxie could guess that it had simply taken pity on the weak. Now that the spiritual herbal gardens are open, our misty illusory manor has once again obtained the opportunity to pick the herbs inside. But because of the 1.400 years gap, no one dares to approach the tree. Naturally, we do not dare to bring more candidates into the garden. Thus, the idea of bringing two people into the garden at the same time is not possible. Miao Xiao Miao said with a sigh. There's no need to put it so hopelessly. After all, there are no absolutes in the world. I feel that the holy tree might not necessarily reject the presence of one more person. The reason the garden was sealed previously was most likely because the tree didn't like some of the people that approached it in the past. We can perhaps try letting a few more people into the garden this time. And then approach the tree one person at a time to try to obtain the acknowledgement of the tree? If the tree dislikes that person, we can just send in the next one. That way, wouldn't we have many more opportunities? Jun Moxie said. That sounds feasible. Miao Xiao Miao pondered for a moment and nodded. However, this matter still needs to be approved by the elders of the misty illusory manor first. Based on my guess, the elders might not be willing to take such a risk. That will be a problem for the Zhan family to worry about. Jun Moxie said confidently. And my purpose in accepting the challenge this time is to obtain this opportunity. Looking at Miao Xiao Miao, he said with a slight smile. If I rejected the challenge, it would ultimately be seen as a sign of weakness. Since they've spent such great efforts to arrange difficulties for me, why shouldn't I take the chance to pose some difficult questions for them as well? They wish to humiliate me and test me. I can give them a chance to do so. But at the same time, they will have to promise me some conditions before I will be willing to compete with them. Opportunities go both ways. How can I let them down like this? If I win, you can strut into the spiritual herbal gardens without any dissent. As for my slot, the Zhan family will naturally obtain it for me. With the Zhan family's status as the #1 aristocrat family in the misty illusory manor, it should be possible for them to obtain this extra slot. Jun Moxie smiled sinisterly. That way, wouldn't it be a great joy? How could you only think on the bright side? What if you lose? Miao Xiao Miao rolled her eyes and stared at him. There was an unspeakably cute charm on her face as she said that, causing Jun Moxie's heart to skip, and he suddenly remembered Dugu Xiao Yi in his heart. This lass is actually so cute when she rolls her eyes. Like my little Xiao Yi. If I lose, I will naturally be humiliated by them a little. Also, according to our previous arrangements, if I lose, that means you lose as well. The both of us will lose the chance to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Jun Moxie cackled. If it really ended like that, I guess you can count it as me dragging you down this once. His face turned unusually serious as he asked. Miss Miao, would you be willing to let me drag you down this one time? Or will you trust me? Miao Xiao Miao's face instantly reddened and she turned her head away uncomfortably. You underestimate the importance of this matter with your words. If you win, everything will naturally be nice and dandy. But if you lose, my qualifications will be lost as well. That is the equivalent of my happiness and future being wrecked. This bet you're taking is equivalent to betting the rest of my life. However, you won't suffer much of a loss. Betting your life? How could it be betting the rest of your life away? Your words are surely a little too heavy. Jun Moxie said hesitantly. For the two of us to meet is also a kind of fate. There are some things that you would know sooner or later, so I will tell it to you briefly in advance. Our Miao family is in a state of decline right now, and there hasn't been an outstanding junior in our family for many generations now. Although there are still quite a number of strong seniors in our Miao family, their ages are great. Most likely, the next generation's manor lord will no longer belong to our Miao family. Truthfully, if not for my father gaining the acknowledgement of the holy tree over 100 years ago, becoming the lord of the spiritual herbal garden, our Miao family would most likely have become relegated long ago. Miao Xiao Miao sighed lightly as her eyelashes fluttered sadly. If the position of manor lord was really taken away by the other families, then in order to maintain the balance of the misty illusory manor, and retain the position of the family, the elders in the family will definitely marry me to the most talented successor of the new leading family. That way, we can maintain our position while slowly biding our time and awaiting the opportunity for our Miao family to rise up again. Although I seem to be doted on and loved by all right now, if things came to that point, I will still only be turned into a sacrificial offering for the family. In order to avoid this worst-case scenario, the only way left is for me to take over my father's position and become the next lord of the spiritual herbal garden. Only by relying on this special position can I escape this fate, obtaining an independent status. Although I still cannot marry, I can do whatever I want. At least, that is still better than spending a life of sadness with someone that I don't like. A trace of loneliness could be seen in her eyes as Miao Xiao Miao sighed wistfully. I don't wish to become a sacrificial item for the family, Miao Xiao Miao said in a soft voice. But I'm also unwilling to see the Miao family decline like this. After all, I'm still the Miao family's daughter. And the only way to have the best of both worlds is to become the spiritual herbal garden's new lord. At that time, even the entire misty illusory manor would not dare to touch my Miao family. Although father still controls the spiritual herbal gardens in name right now, His original starting point was simply too low. His potential was not great enough, and his achievements have reached its limits. In the best-case scenario, he would only have another 200 to 300 years of life left. Miao Xiao Miao's voice turned heavier. As a daughter, I should not talk about father like this. It is undoubtedly an unfilial thing to say. However, this is the truth. An undeniable fact. My talent can be said to be undoubtedly the most outstanding in the Miao family in 1,000 years. However, our Miao family cannot wait another 1,000 years. If anything happens, our Miao family might even completely disappear from the misty illusory manor within 1,000 years. If I married into the new leader's family, the hope of our Miao family will be ended then. While the family could probably continue surviving for a few hundred years more, it's ultimately not a long-term plan. After all, the other party will not wish to see our Miao family rise up once again. But if I could become the new spiritual herbal garden lord, with my talent, I'm already close to the venerable realm. With the nourishing chi of the spiritual herbal gardens, it definitely won't be a problem for me to break through to the Saint realm or the Saint Emperor realm. That way, my lifespan will be at least over 1,000 years, 2,000 years, or 3,000 years. In other words, I alone can secure the position of the Miao family for thousands of years. Moreover, I don't need to sacrifice my own happiness for it. Jun Moxie widened his eyes and sighed deeply. So, this request of yours is equivalent to asking me to bet my entire life away. It's also betting with the future of my Miao family and the lives of thousands of people. Miao Xiao Miao looked intently at Jun Moxie. Her eyes trembled lightly and she bit her lip lightly, her face flickering with emotion. In that moment, Jun Moxie didn't know what to say. To him, this decision was simply a game, an exceedingly boring and dumb game. But to Miao Xiao Miao, it actually had far-reaching impacts to her future. Young Master Jun had absolute confidence. With his abilities and experience, even if he ignored those fellows' schemes and intricately laid out traps, he still had full confidence that he would be able to win with ease. No matter how outstanding those fellows from the misty illusory manor were, no matter how dumb he was, there was no way for them to outsmart the 5,000 years worth of Chinese literature culture he'd brought over from Earth. Jun Moxie had absolute confidence in his victory. However, this Mo Junyi identity of his right now was completely unable to bring any sense of security to others at all. Even if he said that he had absolute confidence, the other party would only think that he was boasting. Even if you have the free and natural physique, with talent surpassing everyone, before your abilities reached a level where people had to pay attention to you, what qualifications do you have to ask others to place their future in your hands and allow you to bet with their fate? Jun Moxie coughed dryly a few times and nodded. Indeed, I might have been too engrossed in my wishful thinking. Young miss, please don't mind me. Take it that I've never said anything. After careful thought, I can see now that there's always going to be a man above a man, and heavens above the heavens. Who knows? Maybe those lofty young masters have truly set up some heaven-defying and impossible situations for me. If I lose, it would be too embarrassing. I'll go back and have a good nap instead. That way, it's best for you and me. After saying that, he waved his hand and turned to leave. Jun Moxie actually did not have the slightest regret in his heart as he said that. This matter was indeed born out of a whim of his. If he truly used the lifelong happiness and the future of a young lady's family as betting chips, even if he won and obtained the 7-colored holy fruits, the results that would follow would not be something that anyone could accept. Because in such a scenario, Miao Xiao Miao would be termed as an accomplice of his. There was no way to deny it. At that time, what would she do? That was the equivalent of ruining Miao Xiao Miao. Can he actually live with such a thing on his conscience? In this life, he'd always done things in a decisive manner with a clear conscience. But in this moment, he truly did not dare to say that his conscience was completely clear. Wait! Miao Xiao Miao sucked in a deep breath of air and called out. Miss! What are you doing? Little Beansprout exclaimed anxiously. This story will be continued to chapter 951. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.